So we have a 56 game schedule, right? Which is 26 games less than normal. So every game is more important. And then you have to look at, well, what's the upcoming schedule look like? In the cases of Vancouver and Edmonton, both of them have an upcoming schedule that's going to be a challenge. And it's going to show which one of them, if either of them, are able to jump out. Maybe both of them are able to jump out of this hole they're in. And a month from now, they both look great. So um, this is something I'll be doing with other divisions too. So for anybody who's going to say, well, why are you talking about Vancouver and Edmonton already? I'm going to be looking at other divisions too. Just look at teams that are, starting off slow and say, okay, so which one of these is going to turn around? For instance, if Detroit were to lose tonight against Columbus and Chicago wins against Florida, both of them would be 1-3, and then we could look at them as well in their division. But for Vancouver and Edmonton, the issue is Vancouver got handled by Calgary. Edmonton handled by Montreal. And now we're going to have to look at the upcoming schedule because things don't look better for Vancouver going forward. So we'll start with Vancouver. I've got a lot of the same stuff on the board for both teams. Both of them are having similar problems. And the fact that their only win was against each other, right? And yes, this is where people will say, well, they haven't played every team yet. Right, yes, and yet this Saturday I'll be doing power rankings, and fingers crossed on how those go as well. So, slow starts for Vancouver. There are some. I thought I would highlight a few. For Edmonton, I found others that were more problematic, and we'll get into that. Pedersen has 1 assist so far in 4 games, but he's a +3, which tells you that defensively he's not costing the team. But also, 5-on-5 hasn't been Vancouver's problem. Now, Schmidt, 1 goal from him through 4 games. I would think a 20-point pace is lower than what was expected from Nate Schmidt when he comes over from Vegas. Horvat with a goal and an assist, and it's got quiet from him over the last couple of games. Braden Holtby is 1-1 with a .909 save percentage. Thatcher Demko's 0-2 with an .883 save percentage. We were all very, very impressed with Demko against the Vegas Golden Knights, right, in the playoffs. And rightfully so. And he got a lot of praise. And again, Canuck fans all like, okay, so he's going to be the starter. That's great. But his regular season numbers last year were middle of the pack to a little bit below that, and he did have his struggles. And so he's having his struggles, but where the real struggles lie in this team being outscored 16-9 4 games into the season, 16-9, is that their power play is clicking at a huge 0%, and their penalty kill is at 66.7%. So if you're only killing off 2 out of every 3 power plays, and you take they've been shorthanded 21 times. I think it's 21. I don't know. It's a lot. They're shorthanded a lot. So as bad as this number is, it's worse when you think about how many times they've been shorthanded this year. So for Vancouver, this is all problematic. On the Edmonton side, Draisaitl 5 assists. Pretty sure he got all that early against Vancouver. Cahoon has 1 assist so far. Puljujarvi, no points and a -4. That line has struggled. Jason, no points and a -5. Turris, no points and a -4. Plus minus over the duration of a season doesn't tell you very much. But over a short period like this, where these teams have both only played against 2 other teams, I think it does tell you a bit of the story. And in this case, it's that Puljujarvi and Turris, while they may have, they may get along quite well and they may be, happy to be playing together, Puljujarvi and Turris are 2 guys that the numbers just haven't been good enough yet. So I'm surprised Puljujarvi hasn't broke through. Eventually, I still think he should, but right, he should. Koskinen, of course, the only goaltender to have seen the net thus far for the Edmonton Oilers. He's 1-3 with an .897 save percentage. He's not the problem, but it is part of a problem with Edmonton in that Smith's there, but he's on the long-term injured reserve, and so they don't really have anybody to spell out Koskinen. So while Vancouver have had okay, not great goaltending, the Edmonton Oilers don't have anybody to give Koskinen the night off. The Oilers have been outscored 15-10. Again, keep in mind, these teams played each other twice, and then they moved on and both lost 2 games against other teams. Their power play 11.1%. Their penalty kill, 85.7%. Their penalty kill's been good. That power play, that's the biggest difference. That's the biggest difference between where we thought they would be and where they're at. And again, struggling against Montreal, well, these things happen. The problem is now Montreal is moving on to Vancouver for the next 3 games. So now we'll look at the upcoming schedule. Montreal for 3 games. The way Montreal's playing, good luck. Then Vancouver has 3 home games against Ottawa. Yes, they should win 2 out of those 3. At the very least, they should. But Ottawa's already shown that they're going to be a tough out. They already managed to secure a win where it wasn't expected against Toronto, so don't take them lightly. And then Vancouver, after those 6 games at home, they go out on the road. They go to Winnipeg for 1. Then they go to Montreal for 2. And then they go to Toronto for 3. So Montreal, they play 5 times in their next 9 games. So for Vancouver, and I know Canuck fans are going to say, well, it's not that bad. 5 of the next 9 games are against Montreal. Montreal, historically, has basically stolen the Canucks' lunch money year after year after year. Carey Price does very well against the Canucks, and we'll see whether or not that continues. I would think they'd have to beat Carey Price. Out of those 5 games, you have to think, 3 of them at least would be against Carey Price? And then the other 2 probably Jake Allen, who showed in Edmonton last night. He's a pretty good goaltender. Almost said defenseman. Not a defenseman. And then you've also got those 3 at Toronto. You have to think that of that 6-game road trip, looking at this 1-3 start, if they lose 4 in regulation out of those 6, that's an issue. And yet you could totally see how they would lose 4 out of those 6. And only playing against other Canadian teams means you have to show that you can beat these teams. There isn't, now we get the West Coast swing through California. Well, we'll win those 3. And then you got Arizona. Yeah, we'll probably win that one. You don't have that this year. This year, you've got just these teams that are going to be tough to play against. And then for Edmonton, now they get to go to Toronto for 2 games. They get to go to Winnipeg for 2 games. And then they're at home against Toronto for 2, at home against Ottawa for 2, before going to Calgary for 1 and going to Ottawa for 2. So there is, if you're Edmonton, there's some good news in this, in that there's 4 games here against Ottawa, but there's also 4 of the next 6 games are against Toronto, who right now look pretty good. They're 3-1. Toronto right now 3-1 leads that division. Montreal and Calgary are both 2-0-1, and Ottawa and Winnipeg are 1-1. One of those teams is guaranteed to miss the playoffs this year. One of them is guaranteed. So I know people are going to say, well, that'd be Ottawa. Okay, let's just say Ottawa's going to fall out. So Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, and Winnipeg. Vancouver and Edmonton have to finish ahead of one of those teams at the very bare minimum. And then you got to remember that for both of them to get in, that means Winnipeg, Montreal, Calgary, Toronto, only half of those teams could get in for both Vancouver and Edmonton to get in. If Vancouver loses 2 out of 3 against Montreal, I expect the panic button probably gets pushed by, if not just by the fans, and the media. I would think that might have Jim Benning concerned. If this team ends up 2-5 to start the season, that's an issue because there's only 56 games in the season. And for Edmonton, again, if they go to Toronto, we could see them lose against Toronto in 2 games and go to 1-5. And again, I am wondering how quickly GMs are going to push that panic button and start making deals. And again, keep in mind you've got the quarantine issue between the border, or coming over the border, so if they're coming from the States into Canada. And I don't know how much teams are going to want to trade with division rivals this year. You don't play anybody else. You can't make a deal with a team that's in your division and say, it'll be fine. Because that trade could come back to haunt you. You look at Vancouver Calgary as an example from last night and the game before that, and Markstrom was the better goaltender in both games. And so that comes back to bite Vancouver, at least for now. Long term, I still think it was the right move. But for right now, yeah, Calgary wins that going away. But for Vancouver, of course, the issue with that was Markstrom wanted a no movement clause, and that wasn't something that Vancouver was looking at because then they would lose Demko on the when expansion rolls around. For Edmonton, there's some moves that I think get made. There may be some moves they can make involving their roster, but having that backup goaltending spot fixed is really, really important. And until Smith comes back, it's likely Koskinen's net. And on the Vancouver front, Pettersson's slow start has been concerning. He gets a fine today for action last night against Monahan of the Flames. And so there are some concerns there too. Very young team, young core anyways for the Vancouver Canucks. And on the Edmonton side, a lot of pressure. And Edmonton has proven to be a team that has a hard time putting together 2 solid seasons in a row. So both Vancouver and Edmonton are in a similar spot. They both have the same record. And the question becomes this. Do they both recover and end up in a playoff spot? Do we see one of them recover? And if so, which one? And how? And how much further can this go? So if both of these teams are well below 500 when we reach the 10-game mark, the 15-game mark, while they're watching other teams that they're losing to, gaining points on them, how far can this go before changes need to be made? And what changes need to be made? I love being able to do this, that we're already into the season and we're already having this discussion. It's fun. It's not meant to be taken too seriously. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video, and hey, yeah, we're back into hockey because we're not even a full week in yet, and we're already having this discussion. Let me know your thoughts. I will talk to you again soon.